Good evening, everybody, and welcome to JW3. We are delighted to welcome you to our online and community and arts centre for an evening of brilliant entertainment. We're so glad to see some of our regulars in the audience. And when I say see, I mean read your names on the Zoom webinar, but we're really looking forward to seeing some of you when we reopen in September. And for those who are new to JW3 online tonight, we're delighted to have you. I wanted to let you know that JW3 is the UK's only Jewish community and art centre of its kind. When our building is open, we offer a huge range of programming for all ages. And since we closed in March, we've been doing many events like this, including an In Conversation With, like this evening, and a Black Lives Matter Everywhere event, the Seret Israeli Film and TV Festival, and an all-night Jewish Art and Culture Festival that included a reading of Lord of the Rings in Yiddish. We've also responded to the changing needs of our local community by creating a local food bank and food delivery service, ensuring hundreds of local people in need of assistance receive nutritious meals each week of lockdown. That's enough about us. Tonight, you are here to hear the incredible Arlene Phillips. I first came across Arlene while enjoying her presence as one of the judges on Strictly Come Dancing. But Arlene has been at the forefront of the entertainment business since the 1970s. She created and directed Hot Gossip, choreographed Wild Boys for Duran Duran, and the original productions of West End musicals Starlight Express, We Will Rock You, and Grease. As I mentioned, she's recently entertained the nation on Strictly Come Dancing as a judge, as well as being on So You Think You Can Dance. Arlene will be interviewed by JW3's very own Neil Marcus, a musical theatre producer in his own right, and a wonderful member of our team. Throughout the evening, you'll be able to send in questions for me to ask Arlene later in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, please feel free to ask questions there too, and we'll feed them back into this space later on. Tonight's programme is free and open to the whole community. If you'd like to support JW3 to continue our programming and work, then please consider donating in the link in the chat now. And with that, please put your hands together, even though I can't hear or see them, for Arlene Phillips and Neil Marcus this evening. Welcome, Arlene and Neil.
Thank you. And thank you, Joe. Lovely to see you. Good evening, everybody. And of course, good evening, Arlene. Just wait for Arlene to come on.
I am trying, and
There you are. Fantastic.
I'm there.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah.
Good. So one of the things that we share, Arlene, is that we both come from Prestwich in Manchester. Can you tell us a little bit about growing up there and how you first got into dance?
I actually, when I was very small, lived in a place called Hightown, just off Waterloo Road, which actually doesn't exist any longer. And then we moved to Prestwich, where I grew up. I went to Broughton Jewish Prep School and eventually to Manchester Central High School for Girls. And my parents absolutely loved the ballet and loved musical films. And so as we were growing up, the one place we were taken to was the ballet and to go to the pictures and see great musicals. Yeah. And I fell in love with dance it was a passion. It's all I thought about. And growing up, I would get every book from the library to do with dance. But sadly, we couldn't afford for me to go to ballet classes or to any dance classes. And I was desperate. And eventually an uncle paid for me to go to my dance classes. And I knew that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Fantastic. And then you moved down to London relatively early in your teens. So what prompted that? How did that come about?
Well, my plan was actually to go to London when I was 16 to go to one of the big dance schools in London. I wanted to go to the Royal Ballet School, and if not the Royal Ballet School, one of the other schools that were basically dance and education. But my mother passed away when I was 15, and I had a younger sister and an older brother. My father was unwell. The shock of it all happened so fast. She had leukemia, and from being told she had passed away within 3 months. Yeah. And it was impossible. My sister was 12 years old. It was impossible to up and leave the family. So I stayed in Manchester. I managed to get a grant to study dance full-time at a school on Deansgate in Manchester, and then began teaching because going to London didn't seem to be an option any longer. But as I got to my late teens, everything changed because my dance teacher said, I believe there's a new place opened in London called the Dance Centre, and anybody can go in, and they've got lots of teachers from America, and you can take a class, and I want you to go for a week, and then in the summer holidays, spend the week there, and when you come back, you'll be inspired. It'll be new inspiration for the students for you to teach. Well, I went for my 1 week, first time in London, went on the train, and it was so exciting. It felt like London, the streets are paved with gold. And I stayed at the YWCA, which was just off Tottenham Court Road, and did classes every day. And on the Friday, before I was going to leave on Saturday, I saw a class posted. It said Modern American Jazz, Molly Malloy. And I thought, oh, I'm going to go into that class. I have not done modern American jazz before. I went into the class. I fell in love with the style, the music, the teaching. It was a cross between ballet, modern, contemporary jazz. And after class, everybody sat around in what was the cafe in the dance centre. And I started talking to Molly, and she asked me all about myself. And she said, I've never seen anyone who's walked into a class and by the end of it absolutely understood the style. You're amazing. I said, this is all I want to do. She said, well, why can't you? And I explained why I can't. And she said, look, I'll give you a scholarship. You are fantastic. I said, yeah, but I've got nowhere to live. She said, well, do you want to live in London? I said, well, I'd love to, but I need to live somewhere and earn some money. And she said, well, my friend is looking for somebody to live in, help with the house cleaning, help with babysitting, and he'll pay, and you can study. And I said, fantastic. Right. And that person was Ridley Scott. And so that's what I did.
Wow.
I moved away. I paid back Miss Tweedy for all the money she spent on sending me to London for a week because I wasn't going back. And I didn't go back because I knew if I did, I would never, ever have the courage to leave again. And my family, my sister was grown up by this time, and they were all accepting of it. So that was it. Life in London like that.
Fantastic. And then you became an in-demand dance teacher in your own right. So tell me about the forming of Hot Gossip and how all that came about.
Well, I started to work with Molly and teach for Molly, do odd classes. And I also taught in all of the big schools, Arts Educational, Italia Conti's, Bush Davis, all the big schools, because I kind of put together and formed my own style of jazz. And I did become very in demand as a teacher because I knew how to teach. Although I dreamed of being a dancer, this is what I knew. And I thought it will provide, money for me to live in London. And then Molly asked me to take over her classes because she was going to move to Paris. So I took over her classes, and I was still very close to Ridley Scott, and I was teaching. And Ridley Scott said to me one day, I got in touch and said, would you choreograph a commercial for me? You're always dancing around the house, as I remember, and I've got a commercial, and it's for Lion's Made ice cream, and I think you'll be able to do it. It's just a milkmaid, a farmer, and a dancing cow. The milkmaid was Miriam Margolyes. The commercial was very short, very punchy, and very successful. And 3 weeks later, Ridley Scott said, I've got 2 more commercials to do. It's an American company. It's for Dr. Pepper, which we didn't have here then. And Dr. Pepper made the biggest dance commercials in America, and they wanted Ridley to do them. And so their whole team came to England, and he asked me to choreograph them. And they were huge. One of them had 42 dancers in Pinewood Studios.
Wow.
So suddenly I was making money because they asked me to go to America and do all their commercials for them. So I was going there and back. And I decided I would take the best dancers from my class and create a dance group using the money I'd earned, because Saturday night television was very step, kick, smile. And what I was doing with jazz, and by this time, in the late 70s, London was buzzing, disco was alive. The whole fashion style was changing, dance was changing. So I wanted to cause a revolution, I guess. And I formed Hot Gossip, very sexy dance group. And for 3 years, we were completely unsuccessful, worked 1 night a week. But the sort of, all the glitterati of London came to see us in the club. We were fashionable, but not successful. And then one director put Hot Gossip on a show called the Kenny Everett Video Show. Mm-hmm. And Mary Whitehouse, the self-proclaimed protector of public morals, complained about us bitterly in the Houses of Parliament, and we made front page news.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And I never looked back.
Wonderful. And of course, there was the hit that Sarah Brightman had with Starship Trooper whilst we were doing all of that as well, wasn't there?
Absolutely. Yeah. Starship Trooper was in the top 10 for 14 weeks. Everyone loved it. And Hot Gossip were part of all of that.
Now, a very eclectic mix. I see here you were involved in choreographing Can't Stop the Music, which was a disco film directed by Nancy Walker, who I know from A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum and Rhoda. So I don't mean I know her, but that's where I saw her. So, and then there's you, and then there's the Village People. It seems to be a really eclectic mix. What's all that about?
It was the strangest thing. What happened is Alan Carr, the producer, who also produced Grease, and Olivia Newton-John were in London. And Alan Carr had decided to make a film with the Village People, because the Village People were the hottest thing in the Navy, YMCA, absolutely huge. And they dropped by this club that I was talking about one night. Hot Gossip were performing in the club, and Olivia and Alan went crazy about them because it was so outrageous. And they thought, right, we want that choreographer and this dance group to be part of the film. So from nowhere, I was flying first class to Hollywood to make this crazy film. And it actually was so crazy, it was voted one of the 10 worst ever musical films made.
Right.
Because the bizarre thing is that Alan wanted the Village People to not be gay, to find girlfriends throughout this film, which was odd in itself. Caitlyn Jenner, then Bruce Jenner, also starred in the film, and Valerie Perrine. And the film was the craziest film you have ever seen, but it had massive dance numbers. I mean, huge. Like what for YMCA, we flew in a super jet all over America to find the best swimmers, the best divers, the best wrestlers, the best high jump. We picked from all of the colleges all these amazing athletes for one number. And I was up and down in that aeroplane, and it was boys, boys, boys. And if anybody ever gets to see the film, look very closely at the shower scene. It's quite a hot surprise.
Okay.
But the film, what happened by the time the film was released, which was a year to shoot, and then almost another year for editing and press, the Village People had had their 15 minutes of fame.
Right.
They were no longer the number one hits. So the film died a bomb.
Now, I understand the opening scene of that's on roller skates, and you
Yes.
regaled that story to a friend of yours, which led to something else. So can you tell us a bit more about that? That's
true. It's a very lucky film for me because there was this amazing incident, which I'll tell you about, and also Ray Stark saw the film and loved the dance numbers, and that's why I got to do the film of Annie. But that will come later. But there are a lot happening on that film, and I also had my first daughter in the middle of the film when we were on hiatus. So talk about a crazy life. But when I got back, I was talking about having to learn to roller skate when I was making this film, and I was pregnant, and Alan was absolutely fine about me being pregnant and taking time off to have the baby. And I was telling Andrew Lloyd Webber about being pregnant on roller skates and having the greatest time. And Alan Carr suddenly walked in one day when I was on my roller skates and went, "Did anybody get insurance for that girl? Look at the size of her. Look at this. Look at the size of that baby." And suddenly there was like, no one had thought about it because I just got on my roller skates and everybody sort of forgot I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And I was telling Andrew about it. And it was 2 years later, Andrew phoned me up and he said, you know that story you told me when you were at my house at Christmas with the baby about the roller skates? I said, yes. He said, well, do you still roller skate? And I said, well, I can. And he said, well, I'm going to do a musical on roller skates called Starlight Express, and I'd like you to choreograph it.
Fantastic.
I love Andrew's memory. And so great.
How did that show go?
Oh, Starlight Express was extraordinary. I mean, it was the scenic design alone had never been seen in a theatre. This giant roller skate with ramps and bowls. Now you see things like that all over the country at skate parks, but building one of those in a theatre was unheard of.
Yeah.
The show was met with mixed reviews, but the show has been all over the world. And this year would have been our 32nd anniversary in Bochum in Germany, where there is a specially built roller skating theatre. And it's like Madame Tussauds. Everybody goes from all over Europe. They have to see Starlight Express. And, you know, it's the first time the show's been closed in 32 years.
Wow. No, I know how it's affecting everything, but incredible to think of a show lasting 32 years and going. You know, yes. This was one of the first, wasn't it? Because shows were not designed to do that. If you had 6 months, it was a hit.
Absolutely. You know. And for its 30th birthday, Andrew and I, and with Richard Stilgo, completely remade the show, bringing in new technology, drones, and also just because we're so very, very different in the way we approach life. And in the original show, all the engines were male, all the carriages were female, and now it's totally switched. Our incredible old engine is now Mama, not Papa, and it's delightful. It's the same show, but it feels like it's for now.
Yeah, brilliant. And the same year you said that you did Annie. How was that as an experience?
It wasn't the same year. It was actually 2 years later.
Right.
I did Annie with the legendary John Huston, and that was just. I thought Can't Stop the Music was big. Annie was enormous, absolutely enormous. It took a year to make the film. It was epic. We filmed in New York, on a lot in Los Angeles. I then did, worked on all the edit. Quite extraordinary. We auditioned for Annie's here in the UK, pretty much everywhere that across New America, and there were 3,000 kids lined up auditioning to play Annie. It was an incredible period of my life.
And having conquered movies, suddenly you're directing Duran Duran videos and Tina Turner videos. So what got you into the pop video world?
Well, interestingly, what got me into the pop video world, is it funny how life ties up, but the producer, director of the Kenny Everett video show, David Mallet, who saw Hot Gossip, actually, he saw a photograph. He never saw them perform, but he knew the Kenny Everett video show was set to break new ground. He saw the photograph and he said, I want that woman, Arlene Phillips, and that group, Hot Gossip, on the show. So he was a very innovative director. And when MTV first began, he and 2 other directors and a producer set up a company to make music videos. And one of their directors, Russell Mulcahy, was the first one to have a video on MTV, Video Killed the Radio Star. So David Mallet was making all of the videos, and I got involved because they wanted me to be part of their company and work with the 3 directors, David Mallet, Brian Grant, and Russell Mulcahy. So I was doing dozens upon dozens of music videos with the 3 directors there, Elton John and Freddie Mercury, Whitney Houston. I felt I was sometimes doing 2 or 3 a week and traveling everywhere, from Detroit with Aretha Franklin, LA with Elton John. It was just non-stop.
And do you have a favorite of that period?
Oh, a favorite. I think Wild Boys is one of my favorites because it's so bizarre, so strange. And again, videos were just getting sort of bigger and better and different. I also did the war song with Boy George, which I also loved because it was different.
Yeah.
And working with Tina in the Rivoli Ballroom, which at the time when we filmed Private Dancer there, it was the day and the night before they closed the building because it had asbestos in the roof. And it was, I cannot tell you what it was like. It was a dump. And Tina sat all night on a little box all day with the dancers, waiting to do her shots. There was no dressing rooms, and she was so cool about it.
Yeah, brilliant. And talking of pop stars, you then did another musical with Cliff Richard, which ran 2 years at the Dominion. So Can you tell me a bit about Time?
Well, Time, again, was, I think because Starlight was so epic, everyone was looking for bigger and better and crazier musicals. And Dave Clark of a group called the Dave Clark Five had actually bought a series of television shows called the Ready, Steady, Go. And he bought this collection, and having got it, he sort of sent this out all over the world. So he decided he wanted an epic musical, and Time was set in the future, and it starred Cliff Richard as the pop star, and you could not get a ticket. Cliff Richard is loved by his fans in a way that he's an idol, and they will come back night after night. In a way, Michael Crawford, who I worked with when I directed the concerts of the music of Andrew Lloyd Webber, he had about anywhere between 150 to 400 women who came and followed him, saved every penny, and just went wherever he was going every single night. Quite extraordinary, that fan love.
Yeah, amazing. Now, if I understand it, David Ian was the final takeover in that show, and Paul Nicholas was the takeover in Grease in the West End from Richard Gere, and the two of them turned producer and produced Grease, which I know is still in lots of iterations. So can you tell me a little bit about the story there?
Well, David Ian and Paul Nicholas had decided they wanted to do a production of Grease, and they went to Robert Stigwood, who owned the rights because he co-produced a film with Alan Carr.
Yeah.
And he had brought into the film the Bee Gees to write 4 songs, which are part of the show now. And Robert Stigwood said, "What, you want to open a production of Grease?" Well, yeah, I want to be part of that. So this small production of Grease that they were going to open now became the mega production of Grease. It was now going into the Dominion. We were going to have, for the first time ever, 16 dancers. That's 16 dancers beyond all the named characters. And this was very, very unusual because Grease had always been quite a small, tight show with only the named characters. And this was this enormous fantasy production that ran and ran at the Dominion. And Robert, who wants to do everything bigger and better, brought Debbie Gibson over to play Sandy, who had #1 hits. Craig McLaughlin from Australia. Shane Ritchie went in as Kaniki. He wanted names. And that show ran for 26 years. Wow. Not all at the Dominion, but solidly for 26 years.
Incredible. And talking about the Bee Gees, Saturday Night Fever was next on the roster, and there you directed and choreographed. So for you, do you prefer directing? Do you prefer choreographing? Do you not mind? And I know that went to Broadway as well. So a little bit about that bubble would be great.
Yes. Funny enough, Robert Stigwood, the last dress rehearsal of Grease, he put his hand on my shoulder, and he wanted to say something to the cast just before we did our final dress. And as we walked down the long aisle down to the stage, Robert said, "Darling, I think you've done the most wonderful job with the choreography. I'm going to think about doing a musical and I want you to direct and choreograph it." That's all he said. I went, "Oh, that's nice." Carried on with my work. And for 2 years, I carried on with my work. Then Robert called and said, "I found the musical. I want you to direct and choreograph. It's Saturday Night Fever. And there's only one condition." And that was Adam Garcia had come to London in a show called Tap Dogs. And Robert had seen the show, it's an Australian show. And Robert absolutely fell in love with Adam and his performance abilities. And when we did at the end of our first contract in Greece, our duty left and we offered it to Adam Garcia. And interestingly enough, duty isn't a big part, but I have to say that Adam shone on that stage. He's magnetic. And so obviously when Robert said he wanted him to play Tony Manero, being such an incredible dancer and beautiful actor, I absolutely wanted him. And so singing was tough because basically Tony Manero hardly ever goes on stage and sings all the way through it. And that was really hard work for Adam. But I loved doing that musical. I loved it.
And how did America and Broadway differ from the West End for you?
Well, American Broadway is very different. We had to take out any profanity. There are a couple of really tough scenes in it. If anyone's seen the film, their memory is it's a happy disco movie. It isn't. It's
very gritty. Yeah.
very gritty. And we had to kind of soften it for New York. They didn't want the grit. And it's hard to find that balance. It's really hard, because you feel like you're failing in one place or another because you're not giving the truth. But the truth is, at that time, Broadway was not ready for it. So whereas it was a big success in the UK, Broadway critics were not so kind.
Okay. And then in 2001, you got an OBE. And in 2002, you were back to the Dominion for another mega musical with Queen. So let's hear a bit about We Will Rock You.
Oh my gosh. Well, We Will Rock You. I knew We Will Rock You was going to happen. And I had worked with Freddie Mercury on some solo videos, and also with Queen. So they got in touch and asked if I would be interested in doing the choreography. And I jumped for it. I mean, I leapt for it. It wasn't an easy ride, because Queen is very much about, and Brian and Roger particularly, Freddie sadly had passed away at this time, but it was his music and lyrics for many of the tracks. And they were very keen that within this musical, that the music and lyrics really came first, and there was a story. And so the choreography had to not overshadow the music and the lyrics. So there's a lot of controlling, trying to get it right, but not make the choreography dazzle. So that's quite a difficult job, because you're trying to expand the story, but also honor the lyrics. So there are a lot of lyrics, and they were singing live, so you really had to be careful that they couldn't be exhausted.
Now, a whole new generation got to know you on Strictly Come Dancing, which started in 2004. Was that right? Can you tell me a bit about that experience?
I was obviously, my name through Hot Gossip and through everything I had done became one of those names that everybody asks you to appear on TV, maybe on a chat show or one thing or another. You just get on TV, often asking you things you know nothing about, but because people know you, they think what you say is important. It's not true, but I became quite known on television. So because I knew about television, they asked if I wanted to be a judge on this new show, Strictly Come Dancing. And I really wasn't sure. I was choreographing all the time. I had a massive choreographic career, and I didn't particularly want to sit and judge people on a television show. But anyway, they asked if I would just come in and do the pilot. And on the pilot, there was Len Goodman, who of course I knew of and met, but not really well. And the two of us were on this pilot, and it really was, it was crazy. They had some of the professional dancers, but not all of them. A couple of celebrities, but not all of them. And a whole group of dancers, some who could do ballroom and Latin, and some who were musical theatre and couldn't do ballroom and Latin at all. And we were just told to talk about what we think about them. And so Len and I felt like, this is a shambles. And Len was, I'm not going to do this. I've got better things to do with my life. I've got my dancing school. And he said, are you going to do it? And I said, I'm not really sure. He says, well, go on then. If you do it, I'll do it. So we had one of those Len moments. And so we both decided to do the show in the end. And then Bruno, I didn't know this, but we were with the same agent. I knew we were the same agent, but Bruno had auditioned for the show and didn't get it. And he was very upset when he found out that I'd got it. So it was me and Len, and Bruno asked me if I would go, if he got a chance on doing a second audition, could we do it together? Because we were very close friends. He had taken my classes, he'd done teaching for me, and we had just become really close. And he said, could you do an audition with me? Because you just, I relax with you. So I said, okay. So I went to do an audition with Bruno, and we worked like clockwork off each other. So Bruno got the show, and we didn't meet Craig till the first day of the first show. And Craig came in, and I knew him because he'd worked for me as a dancer. Whenever I wanted a really tall, strong dancer who was good at lifts, it was Craig. So there we were, the 4 judges. And and I was so glad that I did it because I loved it.
Great. And there's been Strictly Dance Fever and Britannia High, lots of different things in television.
Yeah.
Have you any favourite? Which did you enjoy the most?
Oh, I love Britannia High, but that's partly because it was my creation.
Sure.
Yes, I love doing that series, but I think Strictly. Well, no, I love So You Think Can Dance, but I obviously with Strictly, I love being part of that show.
Yeah, great. And then you've done stuff with the Pythons as well. Is that through a personal friendship, or how did that come about?
Terry Jones was a big fan of Hot Gossip, unbeknownst to me. I had no idea. And when they were going to make a film called The Meaning of Life, they got in touch and asked if I would be interested in working on the film and working and creating the musical numbers with Terry. Terry Jones was the most remarkable man, a polymath, a brilliant comedian, director, writer, but he was also an extraordinary artist. And the way he wanted all of the numbers in the film, he drew these lovely little storyboards. Underneath, he wrote the lyrics and the bars of music and handed me them and said, could you turn that into dance? It was the most amazing thing, particularly doing Every Sperm is Sacred, because he had all these little pictures, and every one of them was made into dance by me. So it was a dancing storyboard. And of course, I then went on to work with Terry on Toad of Toad Hall. And then when they were having their final sort of reunion at the O2, and it was massive, 16 nights, 15,000 people a night with the Pythons together, and just at this really where Terry's dementia was beginning to show and affect him, we did this absolutely enormous show, and that has been one of my personal favorites, the thing that I've done in my life that means so much.
Brilliant.
To have all the Pythons there reunited, because they were very, very sort of separate. There was 2 here and 2 there, and it meant a lot.
Wonderful. And you're an author as well, the Alana Dancing Star books. What was the inspiration for that?
I'd always wanted, particularly after working on Strictly, to do books for children, because I loved every book about dance. I still have my children's books about dance. So it's my passion to write, to entertain and find stories that involve dance. And I called it Alana after my oldest daughter, because, when she was small, she wanted to be a dancing star. Not as she got older, but certainly when she was small. And so I created these books. There's one about a tango, one about hip hop, all the different dance styles. And it was really just a joyful experience.
Wonderful. And then you got your CBE in 2013.
Yeah.
Now, I think there's a few questions people want to ask. So I'm going to ask Joe to come back and join us, if that's all right, Joe. Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah, we've got a number of great questions, Arlene, if you'd be happy to take them.
Yeah.
First off, we've got a question from Lily, who's from Stanmore. And the question is, what has been your experience of being a woman in the world of showbiz, and how has that impacted your career trajectory?
It's very interesting. Being a woman, pretty much every big production that I have worked on has been all male teams. Pythons, for instance, Starlight Express. I could name them endlessly, and it's quite tough being a woman, because you have to stand your ground. I'm not saying at all that all men are bullies, not at all. But if there's anyone that has any pent-up anger, I would notice that it would come at me first. It's the sort of easy option. And I really have had to stand my ground and fight pretty hard. And it's made me feel very strongly in my search for my own associates, and to look at, when I'm directing things, to bring women into it, because I want to be part of an all-female team one day before I give up, or everything is given up unless we get back into theatre.
That sounds incredible, and I really appreciate you sharing from your personal experience. We've got Natasha Spawn on the webinar tonight, and she'd love to hear from kind of some advice for a young couple with 4 left feet and no dancing experience. What would you advise them if they're looking to learn a short routine for their wedding dance?
Oh my gosh. Do not waltz. Do not do anything slow. Just make it fun. You know, a cha-cha is never done as a wedding dance, but my goodness, everyone will want to stand up and cheer when you get that music on, because it's 1, 2, cha-cha-cha, and you can have fun with it. I dread it when people say, I want to do a waltz or a quick step or a foxtrot in the partner, because if both couples don't have dance at the feet, then make it fun. But Natasha, I just have to say that Natasha is very, very special to me. I remember her as a young girl, and she was a huge Strictly fan and continued to be a supporter of mine, and she's very special. So when Natasha wants a wedding dance, just she knows my number, just call me.
Wonderful. So glad to have part of your community here tonight. The next question is from Graham, Graham from Golders Green, and it's about your work on the Gala Forgrenfell and how you feel as a kind of public figure, and the relationship between culture and social action, and doing that sort of work.
I think social action is very, very important, and probably people will recognize this. I mentioned when we were small, we didn't have much money, but we did get a little bit of spending money, and any money we were given would have to go into the J&F box to remind us there were always people that needed things more than we did. And so that has always stuck with me. So I think when you realize, as I did, that as my name got known, and even more through Strictly, that you can help fundraise, you can help do things, because for some reason your name connects And if you ask for something and you ask people to help others, they do. Gala Forgrenfell was a particular emotional, on the spot thing that happened. And that's when I woke up and saw what was happening. I couldn't move at first. I almost was sort of physically challenged at the horror of it. And the first thing that came to my mind is what people will need. How will people recover from this? The people that have even been on the edges of it, the frame of it. And I thought, I want to raise money to find ways to feed their souls, with music, with dance, with art, with games, with how can we fund the future? And I was very lucky because every dance company, every dancer I knew was willing to come and perform. But I do think charity is so important. And look now, so many charities. I know that JW3 is that you have your own charity, and charities have been devastated of funds and lack of them. So it's important. It's really important to me.
Wonderful to hear. Like pairing culture and social action is such a beautiful way of entertaining the world and doing something good. You mentioned the JNF and kind of raising money as a child and putting kind of in the charity box. There's a question from Rebecca here, and I would like to know. She says, what your Jewish identity how your Jewish identity has impacted your life and also your career.
Look, I began life within an Orthodox family, and gradually that faded away. Not really when I first went to London, but when I met my first husband, who were Reform, and I realized that they lived their life in a more relaxed way, but what never left them is that they were Jewish, which is the way I feel now. And I think I've always stood my ground about being Jewish, and would stand up to people who inadvertently made remarks in a way more in the past than than in recent years. Although again, there has been, shocking, absolutely shocking anti-Semitism shown. And I think it's knowing that I come from a family who many were killed in the Holocaust. I know the meaning of being Jewish and the meaning of always standing and saying, this is who I am, and I am my religion, but I reach beyond that as a human being. It's the only way I can describe how I identify my Judaism.
Thank you. I really appreciate sharing from personal experience. We've got a couple of just messages for you from our audience. One from Ruth Finkel, one of our regulars, saying, what an amazing lady. I had no idea you'd done all this marvelous choreography and direction. Thank you so much for all the entertainment over the years. And we've got one of your old students from Mural Tweedies, Diane Green, I think, who's over here remembering very happy times as one of your students. Best wishes, Diane. So we're glad to have you, Diane, and Ruth in the audience. One question from Corinne, and this is about if the dance bug is something that's part of your family and with your siblings, and was this part of your home life?
Dance was only my parents' love for it, and being taken to dance. But it was certainly the biggest part of my life. And when, later in life, I had 2 daughters. My first daughter danced from being very small and continued to dance. But in the end, it became my love of dance I was putting on her, not her love of dance. And my second daughter, who started to dance, had no interest in dancing whatsoever. And I realized that to dance, you have to want it. You have to know, if I can't dance, I can't breathe. It goes together. It isn't something you can take lightly. It dominates your life. But for me, it's dominated it, and I've loved it.
It sounds brilliant. And today we've got a question from Ian from Kensington. And it's he mentions that today was University Results Day, and a really big day for a lot of young people. But there are lots of young people that, aren't suited for university or would want to go into a career in dance, or in something that's in the performing arts. What advice would you give those people who want to pursue careers that may not be necessarily the ones that their parents think for them?
As I said, for any young person, if you want to dance, work in theatre, in any way, in performance, in television, whatever you want to do, follow your dream. You can always, I always wonder why often as parents I let my daughters go their own way. We'd all love a doctor or a dentist. And I find that if you have the ability to be a doctor or a dentist, you can always do that later in your life. You have that facility, you have that kind of brain. Not a lot of people do, but if you have that kind of brain, you will find that. But when you are young and you have a passion, talk to your parents, try it, because otherwise you'll grow up feeling bitter, never forgive yourself. And up until this year, the entertainment industry is huge. It brings in billions, and you can make your money and you can make the life that you're going to love. And that is so important. To get up every morning, even my daughters say to me, "Mummy, you are so lucky. You get up every morning and want to go to work. That's the kind of job I want." And that's the way everyone should think. And that's what they should be taught in schools. What is the job that will make you get up and want to go to work? That's how you find your future.
That's really incredible advice. Thank you so much. There's one question, and it's about your work in Clockwork Orange, and wanted to see how you approached something that was such a different subject matter to a lot of the productions that you did that were much more upbeat and kind of exciting in that way.
Clockwork Orange is a book that I loved, a film I loved, and really strange and extraordinary. And I think it was the first time in a way that what I was doing was physical movement as a response to the story rather than dance. And I've gone on loving that form of movement. Recently I did, last year, A Midsummer Night's Dream at the Bridge Theatre with Nick Heitner, which again was movement. It had circus elements, movement elements, some dance elements, working within a play. And I think that is one of the things that I love most, is creating storytelling through dance. And Clockwork Orange was my first opportunity, and I always hoped it would not be my last.
Thank you. We've got a question from Kathy from Pinner, and Kathy wants to know about your experience in lockdown, and what you have done to engage in performance, dance, or even kind of watching performance. What has got you through? Have you been dancing at home? Have you been choreographing things for the future? What has got you through this moment, which is going to be very difficult for the arts industry?
Oh, it's been so hard. It suddenly felt like, someone had taken a pair of scissors to my life and just snapped them, because this year was such a busy year. I had new musicals, reviving old musicals. It was non-stop. And I've always done so much in a day, in rehearsals, in a rehearsal room, this kind of non-stop life, going meetings at lunchtime, events, or going to see musicals or dance or plays every night. And I happen to be where I am now, in this tiny little isolated cottage, with nobody living close by. And I was here a week before lockdown, not expecting lockdown, and suddenly I was stuck. And at first I was numb. I didn't know how to respond to it. And then I thought, well, the first thing I need to do is exercise. And I didn't want to dance, because somehow it didn't feel right. I couldn't feel I could dance. So I started walking, building up 5,000 steps, 10,000 steps, going to 20,000 steps in the countryside, so challenging myself. Then I started eating far too much, eating 3 meals a day. Who eats 3 meals a day? I never did. 3 meals a day, and it became my obsession. Eating became my next obsession. And then I started to do quite a lot of charity events, doing Zoom events, a lot of them, and trying to fundraise, doing the odd TVs. And then I started to think, hang on, all is not lost. Let's start developing some work. And I've worked on 2 different projects with great sort of writers that I'm very excited about for when I come out of this. But I wasn't doing a lot of dancing. It somehow didn't feel right, dancing in a cottage or dancing outside. But slowly I'm starting to do more dance. And it started with, I do a lot of work with the Alzheimer's Society, because my father had Alzheimer's. And they asked me to make a little film with a fairly youngish woman who had a dance school. And it suddenly got me dancing, because I was dancing with her, and, looking at her and teaching her little bits of dance, and then developing it from that. I've just started dancing again. But gosh, it's been tough. And theatre just feels like it's slipping further and further away, not getting closer and closer. And bless Andrew Lloyd Webber, who today had his vaccine, his COVID vaccine, because he's determined to find a way that we're going to get through all of this and open theatre. And again, he's given the Palladium as a guinea pig to ways that theatre could work in the future.
Thank you so much, Arlene, for that honest depiction of what lockdowns looked and what's to come. We're looking forward to it. I'm going to throw back to Neil, who's got a question for you to wrap up this evening. But thank you so much.
That's great, Joe. Thank you. Yeah, Arlene, just before we finish, I was wondering who's most inspired you as a choreographer, and who are you most excited by that's emerging, breaking through now?
Emerging choreographer.
Yeah.
I think my inspiration was Twyla Tharp.
Right.
Extraordinary choreography. Just a wonderful, daring and dangerous mix of all genres together. Yeah, I was really, really inspired by her. And I even went to New York to see works that she had done and take classes when she was teaching. So she was a massive inspiration. But right now, I love a young choreographer who I saw his work. I'm going to mention two very quickly, called James Cousins, who has an extraordinary company. Unfortunately, he was supposed to be doing yet another work this year, and that has at the moment sort of floated to sometime next year. But when he does, remember the name. And also a brilliant Canadian choreographer called Crystal Pite, who one of her pieces, Reviser, is on YouTube. And if anybody loves dance, you have to watch it. It is extraordinary, and her dances are phenomenal. But there are so many extraordinary choreographers, Matthew Bourne, Kate Prince. We are just, living this dream of dance. It's so full right now.
Brilliant. Well, look, I want to thank you so much for a fascinating evening. It's been great. I want to remind everyone to check out the JW3 website for what we've got coming up next, and have a great evening, everybody. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.